Today on episode 8 of the Play Guitar Podcast, I talk about soloing over chords and the 4 sticky situations you need to plan for. Also, we have some guitar news and another installment of Creating a Band, so stay tuned. Welcome to episode 8 of the Play Guitar Podcast. I'm Lee, and this is the podcast that's determined to make you a better guitar player. No matter if you're just starting out, if you've been playing for years, this is the show that'll help you become the guitarist you always wanted to be. On today's episode, titled Improvising over Chords, I'm going to take a beginning approach to playing melodies over chords, over chord progressions. I found there's really just 4 different situations you find yourself in when you start to use the guitar as a lead or a melodic instrument. And this isn't just for beginners, though. Getting this together has really helped me. It helped me put into words something that I've been developing over time, and I didn't really think about a lot. I didn't consciously realize there were 4 different situations I deal with over and over again every time I create a lead for a song. I would just deal with the song on hand and I kind of go on autopilot. But now that I've gotten this down and I have it spelled out, there they are, the same 4 situations I go through over and over again. And seeing this, I didn't write it down, I typed it out, but it started something in my mind. I'm getting ideas for what I'm going to do the next time I make a lead. I'm actually able to see the path that I'm going to take. Writing down my process because I was writing it down because I want to share this with you. It's really cleared some things up for me. And this is just a quick aside. My playing is really benefiting from this podcast. It's been a good thing. I think I'm benefiting just as much as the folks who've been so kind to leave reviews for the show or ask me questions. And you ask, well, how's that? You hear it said that teachers they get just as much out of teaching as a student does. And I always heard that and I thought, well, that sounds kind of nice, but no, not really. The student's probably getting more out of it. But I'm here to tell you it's true. All of it. The Force is true. The Jedi, it's all true. Sorry. My first Star Wars reference, I was wondering how long I was going to take before I threw one of those in here, and it's today. Anyway, my tip for the day is show someone else how to do something that you love. There's something about putting things into your own words that gives you a very special perspective. It's a different way of looking at something that you may take for granted. Okay, that's how I do that. How can I improve on it or take it in a different direction? Really, teach someone how to do something. You will benefit immensely. I'm living proof. Okay, enough of that. I just want to quickly thank you for some great iTunes reviews this week. Thank you. Thank you so much for Kaje89, Robert S., and Benderman UK for leaving some great reviews on iTunes this week. I really appreciate it. These reviews in iTunes early on, we're only on episode 8. They can really help me get started. And if you can, please leave a review as well. It's really easy to do. You just head over to my page, playguitarpodcast.com, and click the blue button that says subscribe in iTunes. That takes you to my iTunes preview page, and from there, click on the blue button that says view in iTunes. Your player will open right up, and you can subscribe and leave a review if you want to. It's really simple. And if you do leave me a review, let me know about it. I'm learning about this. Every country has its own iTunes. And there are 120 different countries that iTunes serves. So it's really easy for me to miss one. If you've left me a review and I haven't thanked you, please email me. My email is lee@playguitarpodcast.com, or you can get to me on Twitter. I'm at playguitarpdcst. Drop me a line so I know that you've left one on there, because I really want to thank you for it. Okay, so that's enough of all this. Let's go ahead and get on to the main topic, which is improvising over chords. One of the great joys of playing guitar, for me, is improvising. Creating new and unique melodies on the guitar can be addictive. Once you get to the point in your guitar journey when you're playing guitar, where playing lead guitar becomes the priority, you're faced with a whole new set of obstacles. Most players that are interested in lead guitar start by memorizing the tablature of favorite lead guitar parts. And that's fun. It's fun for a while. You get up and running, all the notes sound great, and they sound awesome. They match the chords of the song perfectly. What's not to love? After getting a good group of leads memorized, though, most of the new students or lead players, they're ready to go on to the next step, making your own stuff up. Improvisation. This is the point where things start getting really tough. You may start asking yourself questions like, what notes should I play? Scales. What is a scale? Okay, I've learned a scale. It sounds nothing like my favorite songs when I play it. And are these notes right? A lot of the notes I'm playing, they sound wrong. And the more you play, the more you struggle. Eventually, you finally ask yourself this question. And this is the one. How do my favorite guitar players come up with this stuff in the first place? That's the question you need to ask. That's it. The $1 million question. Once you understand the how and the why of playing lead guitar melodies, that puts you on the fast track to success. And this topic that I'm talking about, playing scales over chords, it's part of a bigger picture. This is part of my 6 essential steps you need to really understand how to use guitar scales. It's actually step 5. Start playing those patterns over chords. This one step is very important. Anybody can memorize a bunch of scale patterns, but using them and making them sound great is a whole different story. I suggest you go back and listen to my past couple episodes if you haven't heard those before. So we start talking about scales and scale patterns and all those things. This will get us up to this point where we're using them playing over chords. Learning the guitar, it's kind of like building a house. You need a strong foundation, and you need to build from the bottom up. If you're missing some stuff, if you're missing any foundational information, playing over chords starts to get pretty complicated. But with everything we've learned in the past couple episodes, I think we'd be ready to start doing this. We're going to start tackling playing scales over chords. In my small group classes, I always do this right after I introduce the minor pentatonic scale. I get my students started right away with improvising. And so this, the first thing I do is I teach them which is the strong note of the scale, the tonic note. Usually it's in red. I put all of them in red. So you have a scale pattern. Say you have the blues box, the 1-4, 1-3, 1-3, 1-3, 1-4, 1-4. And where your first finger is, that's the strong note of the scale. And what we do is we slide that pattern up and down the neck until it becomes the same note as the root note of the chord. So say we're playing an A chord or an A7 chord. So that A would be at the 5th fret of the low E string. We slide this pattern up so that our first finger starts at the 5th fret of the low E string. At that point, the scale pattern is ready to play over the chord. And so then I'll loop a chord and I'll tell them, okay, play anything you want to at all with this scale. You can skip notes, you can repeat notes, go up the scale, down the scale, it doesn't matter. Just get creative with it. You could play one note 100 times. It wouldn't matter, it wouldn't be wrong. But when you're finished saying what you want to say, hit the tonic note. It's just like you were putting a period or an exclamation point at the end of a sentence. Well, what would happen if you didn't, hit the tonic note? If you left it hanging on another note, it would sound almost like you wrote a sentence with a question mark. You made a phrase that didn't sound finished. So you need another phrase, and at the end, you've got that period. And it sounds like a complete musical sentence. You can try this out yourself too. It's really fun. Just go ahead and get an A7 chord playing somehow. You can either loop it with a loop pedal or find an A7 backing track. I've got a good one from YouTube that I've linked in the show notes to this page. That would be www.playguitarpodcast.com/008. We're on episode 8 now. And then just slide the A minor pentatonic pattern we learned last week right up to the 5th fret. That puts the root of the chord and the tonic of the scales on the same note. At that point, start improvising. Use those notes to play anything you want. When you're done, hit the strong note, hit the tonic or the root. We already talked about people get all that confused, but hit the strong note. After everyone plays this for the first time, you wouldn't believe the smiles that start popping up all around the room. The scales matched the chord. All the notes sounded great. And when they hit the tonic note at the end of their improv, their melody line felt like the sentence was over. It was complete. The musical statement was over, and they were ready to create the next one. You wouldn't believe how much fun this is and effective. And this is how I get my students started. But to go further down the road, we have to have a plan. It's not often you only have to play a scale over one chord for a whole song. With more complicated chord progressions and even key changes, moving forward from here can be difficult. So let's find out the different situations you may find yourself in and the ways to approach playing over different chords. Once you start improvising over many different songs, you'll find it's not one size fits all. It's not always as easy as what we just did above. There are several different scenarios you'll find yourself in. Here's what you can expect. Here's the first scenario. Just one chord. That's what we were just talking about. You've got one chord and it's played over an extended period of time. It's easy. Once you find the right scale, you match it up, play anything you want. All the notes sound great. That's the first one. The second scenario you'll find yourself in is you've got a group of different chords, a chord progression. But these chords really require only one scale. You can play one scale over all of them. Once you find your scale that matches, it sounds great over all the chords. A blues progression is a great example of a chord progression that you only have to play one scale over. The third scenario you find yourself in is a chord progression that mostly works for just one scale, but has one or two chords that they don't sound right. So you're playing along in that scale, everything's sounding good, and then this one chord pops in and you're like, oh, that doesn't work. So that's a separate situation we're going to talk about today. And the fourth scenario is a chord progression that uses multiple scales that go through multiple keys. And anyone who's tried to play jazz realizes that that's the name for the game in jazz. You're going through different keys. You're having to switch your scale patterns periodically through all the chords you go through. Okay, so now that we know what we're up against, let's create a plan for using our scales in all four of these situations. Situation 1, playing over a single chord. In modern music, you find yourself in this situation a lot. It could be a funk song, a rock song, modal blues, even part of a folk or country song. No matter what style of music you're playing, you'll have the same problem. How to come up with a solo over just one chord. First, we need to select a scale that will match the chord we're playing over, we talked about. And for that, we need to look at the chord that we're playing. What type of chord is it? Is it some type of major chord, minor chord, or a dominant seventh chord? In this podcast, I'm going to stick with the big four scales we talked about before. That's the major, the minor, pentatonic major, and pentatonic minor scales. If it's a major chord, you should play either the major scale or the major pentatonic scale. If it's a minor type chord, play either the minor scale or the minor pentatonic scale. Pretty easy. If you're playing a dominant seventh chord, this is where it opens up a little bit. You can play either the major pentatonic or the minor pentatonic scale. Those will both sound nice, but you can also play something that's called the Mixolydian Mode. Right. The Mixolydian Mode. And you play that over the seventh chord. It sounds pretty complicated, but it's not. It's super easy. The easiest way to make this scale or mode is to take the major scale and find the seventh note and lower that note 1/2 step. In the key of C, the seventh note is a B. C, D, E, F, G, A, B. That's note number 7. We're going to take that note, we're going to lower it down 1/2 step to B flat, so that now that note is a B flat. So here's the notes we have now. C, D, E, F, G, A, B flat, C. That scale right there fits perfectly over the C7 chord. So that's the Mixolydian Mode. It's really simple. and it sounds great over a 7th chord. So there it is. Once you figure out what scale you play, you just have to match it to the chord on the guitar. It's easy. Find the tonic note of the scale, slide it up till it matches the tonic note of the root, you're good. So let's move on to situation 2, a chord progression that requires only one scale. I find this to be the most common situation my students deal with. This is where you have to play over a group of different chords, but the chords are all related in a way that one scale works for all of them. Playing over these are a lot of fun and super easy. You just figure out what key the passage is in and find the appropriate scale, and it just works. Usually these are called diatonic chord progressions, and what that means is that all the chords are created from the notes that are in the key of the song. Let's go through that. The notes in the key of C are C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. And each of those gets a number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, with C being back to the beginning again. So let's look at an easy diatonic chord progression in the key of C major. So if we played a C chord first, then an F chord, then a G chord, and then a C chord. You know what? I'm going to get my guitar. I think this would be better demonstrated that way. Okay, I got my guitar here. All right, so we're talking diatonic chords. We talked about the notes in C, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. And we've got a chord progression here. We have a C chord. We've got an F chord, a G chord, and back to a C chord. Another way of thinking about this is the 1 chord, the C is the 1, then the F, that's the 4 chord, the G is the 5 chord, and back to the C, which is the 1 chord. And what that means is that the first chord C, starts on a C note. That's the root note of the chord. And that's also the first note of our scale. So it's built off of that note. We're going to give that, and we're going to call that a 1 chord. The next chord was an F chord. The strong note of that is an F. And let's see, in C we have 1, 2, 3, 4. F is the 4th note of the scale. So that chord we're going to call the 4 chord. And the other chord we had is the G chord. That's the 5. So let's see here, C, D, E, F, G. It's the 5th note of the scale. That's the strong note for that chord. So we'll call that chord a 5 chord. Okay? And so we know that these 3 chords fit very nicely. The roots of those chords come right from the scale. But let's look at the other notes in the chords. So in the key of C, we have 3 notes, C, E, and G. Well, C is the first note of the scale, E's the 3rd, and G's the 5th. So all of those notes are in the scale. They match. Let's look at the F chord. The notes in the F chord are F, and let's see here. We have an A, and we have a C. Those are the 3 notes in the F chord. So the C works. F is the 4th. We already know that. And A is the 6th. So all 3 of those notes that are in the F chord are also contained in the C scale. So they match perfectly. Let's look at our last chord, the G chord. The notes in that chord are G, B, and D. Well, G's the 5th, B's the 7th, and D is the 2nd. So all of those notes are in there too. So every chord note that we're playing in C, F, and G, they all come directly from the C major scale. They sound great. So let me record a little bit, and I'll play a little C major scale. So now I'm just playing the C scale. Over all these chords. Just one scale, not a problem at all. Matches perfectly over all of those chord progressions. Very nice, very nice. Another type of chord progression we talked about before you can use one scale over is a blues, and you can try that, get a blues backing track, and try your minor pentatonics and major pentatonics over them. They match the keys of a blues progression, and it's a lot of fun. Okay, let's move on to situation 3, the chord progression that almost works for one scale. And this has happened to me so many times. I'm playing a song I thought would be easy. I've matched my scale to the chord progression. Everything's going great. And then it happens. Clunk. One of the chords from one of the songs doesn't match the scale I'm using. And it's a definite ouch. Those were serious wrong notes in the middle of a great sounding solo. When I first started playing lead and this happened, I'd just panic. And the next time when that chord would come around again, I'd either wouldn't play during that chord, or I'd just find out what the root note from that chord was and play that root note in my solo. And those are both good, quick fixes when you're playing over something and you've got a chord that's not quite working out. But taking the time to really understand what to do when you have one of these outside sounding chords, it's worth it in the end. But now I love it when I run into a difficult chord. Now I think of it as a featured chord, something I can call attention to it and try some new sounds over. So I have a different way of looking at it. But when I started, those weird chords would really throw me. So what you do is you have to temporarily change your scale for just this chord. The easiest thing to do is play the arpeggio, which are just the chord notes of that chord in your scale, in your lead playing, And that way you're guaranteed not to play a wrong note. But try changing the scale altogether. And we're going to have an example right here. Say you're playing in the key of D and you're playing along and all of a sudden you have a C chord. And that's pretty common. You find that in a lot of songs that the C chord is in a song that's in the key of D, D major, but it's not from the D scale. So if we look at a D scale, let's see here. D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, D. So the note in the scale is a C sharp. And the chord we want is a C. Those notes don't work. The notes of a C chord are C, E, and G. The E and the G work, but the C, it doesn't match the D scale. So what we're going to do is I'm going to play a chord progression just like that. It's going to have a D, an A, then a C, and a G. You find this in a bunch of songs. And I'm going to go ahead and record that now. Then we'll take a listen to what it sounds like when you just play the D scale over those chords. Okay, so I'm going to play the D major scale. You hear that? Doesn't work there. You hear that? Oh, that's a terrible C sharp in there over that C chord. Didn't work. So let's try it again this time. But this time, I'm going to, when I get to the third chord, the C chord, I'm going to change to a G major scale. And that'll put the C right where we want it. Here's D. Now we'll change the G. There's the C. Back to the D scale. Switch to G, G major scale. Okay, so I hope you could hear the difference. When I switch the scale to match the chords halfway through, boom, new scale, sounds great, everything matches, everything goes good. Okay, so the last situation is situation 4. That's chord progressions that have multiple keys. Although most popular music generally stays in one key for the whole song, that's not the case for all music, especially in jazz music. It's very common for one piece of music in jazz to modulate to several different keys. And to be a confident jazz player, you you've got to be comfortable changing your scale patterns. Essentially, you just follow the same pattern, the procedure that we just did in situation 3. You take a look at the chord progressions ahead of time, see where the chord changes, work into new keys and make the changes to your scale patterns. There's a very simple song to demonstrate. It's called Blue Bossa. And the majority of the song's in C minor, and it uses C minor. Let's see, F minor 7, D minor 7 flat 5, G7 altered, back to C minor 7. Those are easy. They all kind of fit in the C minor area. But as you go through the song, in the middle section, it modulates to a new key in the key of D major. So we've got an E flat minor 7, an A flat 7, and a D flat major 7. That's where you have to change your scale. And that D major 7 scale works for all 3 of those. So you would group all 3 of those chords into a where you would play your new scale. But after that, it goes back to C minor. You've got another D minor 7, G7 altered, and C minor 7, where you're back in C minor. So you're going back and forth between C minor and D flat major. As you can see, it's a relatively easy song, but even shifting in for a second into a new scale pattern, you have to really think about it. It takes a whole lot of practice and a lot of patience to do well, but it's something you can do if you work on it. Learning to play scales over chords is one of the most enjoyable things you can do with the guitar. And learning to improvise with the scale patterns we've learned takes a lot of time, but it's well worth it. We talked a bit about how to start improvising over a chord change, and then we went through the 4 types of the chord progressions. You're going to find while you're trying to do this stuff in order from the easiest to the most difficult. Playing scales over chord, it gets easier the more time you spend with it. If you're new to this idea, start matching those big 4 scales that we learned to some background tracks and have some fun. Put it in your daily practice routine. It won't take long before you're improvising awesome melodies with the guitar. This is Guitar News. This is my weekly time to report on the wonderful and wacky world of guitar players. This is fun for me, and here's how this works. Throughout the week, I see some cool stuff I'd like to share with you, and I just kind of set it aside. And then we kind of go through it together here on the show. I've got 3 things today. I've recently been getting them all from Guitar World, but not today. Today we've got some different stuff. And the first one comes from the Daily Mail, UK. All right. And it says, touring with the band has never been easier. The amazing fold-up guitar that can fit in your hand luggage, and you can even pack clothes inside of it. I think that's what caught my eye. It's a picture of some luggage. And the guitar is inside open, and they've got some sunglasses and shorts and sunscreen, or I don't know what it is, all packed inside the body of the guitar with the neck detached and in the side pocket right there. Now, admittedly, the guitar does look kind of boxy for an acoustic guitar. But hey, if that's what you got to do to pack your suitcase in the guitar, that's what you got to do. So let me take a look at this. Now you can easily take the band on tour thanks to a fold-up guitar that doubles as a suitcase. It was made by the Irish inventor Ian McLean. Sorry if I'm messing your name up. Sorry to the folks in the UK. But it's a travel guitar. It features the note case travel guitar. It features a removable back and neck, and it breaks down to a size suitable for cabin luggage, which is always a problem lately. Getting these things on planes, it's terrible. So let's see here. It's a padded bag, and it can be dismantled and reconnected in less than 20 seconds. I always love neat stuff like this. Go over and give it a look right there. That's pretty cool. Pretty cool. Okay, I just wanted to share that with you. The next thing we have is from musicradar.com. It's a little more Gibson news. I've been kind of focused on this lately. I lived outside of Nashville for a few years, and really enjoyed the Gibson factory there, and it's been sad news lately, but here we go. Gibson responds to bankruptcy reports claiming their new strategy will lead to the best financial results the company has seen in its history. So they're trying. Gibson has issued a response to reports that it's running out of time to clear its debts, in which it sketches out a rosier picture for the future of the company, though it seems that some of its current brands may well end up leaving the group or disappearing entirely. I do know that the software that I'm recording this program on right now is Sonar X3 by Cakewalk, and Gibson had bought Cakewalk a year or two ago, changed its pricing structure to a subscription base. I didn't partake in that, but it was different. And then now it's over. Cakewalk is gone. Gibson got rid of it. So they've been doing a lot of things with these side businesses they have. And sounds like they're going to start restructuring the way they do things. I sure hope so, because I love Gibson guitars. And it says here they want to get back to the financial success that they had. Good luck, Gibson. I sure hope you do. Because I've played a lot of Gibsons, and I would like another one at some point. My third news story comes from Music Radar as well. And this is fun. Eric Johnson and Fender released the first contoured Stratocaster thin line, which is pretty neat looking. It's not a boxy thin line. It's got the contoured sides, but still has the F hole up on top above the pick guard. It says US guitar icon Eric Johnson teamed up with Fender for a new signature Stratocaster thin line. It has the notable honor of being the first semi-hollow Strat to also feature the classic design body contouring. They've been working on it since 2015 with the aim of combining the Strat tones and those of his semi-hollow guitars. And if you know a little bit about Eric Johnson, he has that iconic song Cliffs of Dover, and a lot of the coolest parts of that song were recorded on a 335. He's associated with having a Strat, but a lot of his recordings were done with a 335. So he's trying to get that sound into a Strat. It's nitro finish. It's a capped alder body. It's custom chambered. Very cool guitar. I have the link in the show notes to all of these articles, and go take a look at it. It might be the guitar for you. I don't know how much it's. Let's see here. Available in vintage white and 2-color sunburst, the Eric Johnson signature Strat thin line has an MSRP of $1,999. So I don't know if I'll be getting that anytime soon, but it looks pretty cool. Maybe I will. You never know. Anyway, that's guitar news. Hang on for Creating the Band. Okay, let's get into Creating the Band. This is where I share with you each week every step it takes from start to scratch, just an idea in my head all the way through the process to end up with a working band, with an album, videos, website, promotion material, all that stuff. So we're on song number 9. Up to this point, we've had 8 little ideas of songs. I want 10. I'm just getting short little snippets of songs. And once I get 10 and they kind of match together, which I think they will, I'm going to go back and start working on each song individually. And I'm documenting all that here. So we're on song number 9. This is just a bit of slide guitar. I've been listening to a lot of Sonny Landreth lately, and I went back and I found this clip in my stash of song ideas that I've recorded. It's not a big clip. It's not much, but it sounded pretty cool. And I thought I might first I thought I'd use this for a transition for here on the show in between segments. And I probably will, this part, but I also want to write a song off of this. I like the vibe of how it was recorded. I think it's something I might use. So take a listen to this. Here we go. So what do you think? I thought that was pretty cool. I didn't remember recording that. It's in my kind of my stash of ideas, but first thing I thought that would be really cool for this song, for the podcast, for a little to go from segment to segment. But I'm going to write a song around that. I've got some ideas and it kind of makes me smile when I hear it. So that's idea number 9. One more idea to go before we start tearing these songs apart, starting building them up, putting verses, choruses, solos, all that stuff in them right there. So tell me what you think. I'd love to hear what you think about how we're doing with creating the band. And you can respond in the show notes. This is www.playguitarpodcast.com/008. All right. So that's a wrap. Thanks for joining me today for the Play Guitar Podcast. If you like what you heard, please subscribe to the show in iTunes or your podcast player. Also, I'd really appreciate it if you could leave me an iTunes review for the show. If you're interested in online lessons, go on over to playguitaracademy.com and join my early adopter list to get news on the opening of the site and an early adopter discount. Also, follow me on all of my different social media pages. Links to them are at playguitarpodcast.com. Well, thanks again. It's been great having this episode 8. We're tearing through these things, and I'm looking forward to seeing you on the next episode. Bye-bye.